Hypernatremia is more straightforward. Most commonly, your hypernatremic patient will be your patient who is unable to get fluid to themselves. And most commonly, we're going to see this, especially when we get patients serum sodium 170, 165. This is going to be your nursing home patients or, again, chronic care patients who have some alteration in mental status. So otherwise, it's been patients who are reaching out and getting a nice, crisp, cold, refreshing glass of something in response to thirst. Usually, it's free water loss without taking in water. So it could be your patient getting tube feeds who's getting hypertonic tube feeds. That's accident. Could be somebody with watery diarrhea, so they're losing water with respect to water gain. Somebody with C. difficile diarrhea or cholera, stuff like that, they can't keep up with that loss, that fluid loss that's coming out the other end. So just think of the patient who is losing water. And basically, you take your cup and you have your salt in your cup, and somehow, let's say you're able to extract water out of there, but not the salt. They become hypernatremic. So that'll be the most common way you'll see it. Others, renal failure is one, but typically in renal failure, it'll be the opposite. A lot of times we'll have patients who end up with serum sodium goes down as they retain more and more water. Excess sodium intake, iatrogenic, not something I've seen very often, but I suppose it's possible. Someone's really crazy with eat salt because of some psychological reason. So extrarenal water loss, hypernatremia from hyperventilation, how do you see that? But diarrhea, sweating, I don't know about that. I wouldn't say just from sweating. I'd say again other causes of water loss. Because I would think if they're sweating and they're replacing it with free water, they're going to become hyponatremia. But I suppose the opposite can happen. Again, the patient is not able to take any water. So hypernatremia, really think of your patient who is losing water for some reason. It is possible to become hypernatremic due to water loss through the kidneys, polyuria, something called diabetes insipidus. So you're just losing free water, you're just urinating all this water, causing your sodium concentration to go up. We see this in patients with catastrophic brain injury, with cerebral edema, or other causes of brain damage, brain death. We'll see them have increased urine output due to diabetes insipidus. Here, again, you'll check your urine osmolality. And if your patient is hypernatremic and their urine is inappropriately dilute, right? So central diabetes insipidus, that would be somebody with brain injury, or nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. Again, that's due to renal cause, but to really expand on that is beyond today's scope. Just know your hypernatremia workup will also include urine osmolality, so you can get a sense of what's going on. But clinically, you should be able to figure it out. I don't need a urine osmolality, generally speaking, to tell me why they're hypernatremic. And if you go up and you see if they have a Foley, and their Foley bag is full of this clear water, and their serum sodium was 140 and now it's 152, and they have some like massive stroke or some other cause for brain anger, I already know from the GI. So otherwise, from renal water loss, so poorly controlled diabetes mellitus, if you're fully controlled but you're not DKA, and you just have hyperglycemia, and you have the polyuria, polydipsia, polyphagia, the 3 P's of diabetes, which if you haven't already, you'll learn about eventually. They can have hypernatremia, but again, what's going on? Water loss. So water loss with respect to salt. That's what causes it. So you could memorize this crap, or you could at least memorize that, well, for some reason your patient's losing water. Why are they losing water? You should be able to get that predicted. So symptoms, You don't need to memorize it, except to say that you can get brain damage from it if you don't correct it, especially above 160 is critical. When it gets there quickly, you'll have alterations in mental status, confusion in your patients from a nursing home, your chronic care patients who become hypernatremic. It could be chronic, or it could get there a little slowly. They begin to get sick, they begin to get a UTI or pneumonia, and remember that when you get sick, you need more water, you have higher insensible fluid loss at a higher rate. So they'll slowly start to pick up their sodium. The creatinine will also start to come up. Beyond today's scope, we'll eventually learn about creatinine. So, of course, increase in sodium, your serum osmolality will increase as well because the key component is going to be your sodium level. And increase urine specific gravity, which again has to do with how concentrated the urine is. But this is where you're going to have actually your urine osmolality will depend on what form. Actually, kind of ignore the urine. You ignore the urine specific gravity. That's not necessarily true. But certainly increased serum sodium, increased serum osmolality. I don't know, that's why it's not as important. I think it's pretty serious. So how do you treat it? The thing I want you to know, and there is a formula. I won't make you memorize it. I'm not sure. Again, there's certain things I want to make you memorize. Or might make you memorize. That's why I take it easy on this course, because I know pathos can be a bit of a bear. So, been there, done that. Bear. So the bear hunt, one day. They killed too many bears. So anyway, yeah, I had a dream.
It was in the news.
I want to go on the bear hunt, so I didn't have enough bullets. So, anyway, so hypernatremia. So what do? First, you try to figure out the cause. Are they losing too much water? Are they urinating it out? Is it diabetes insipidus or something similar? Is it your patient who has a significant cerebral injury, or do they for some reason have nephrogenic diabetes insipidus? Or are they losing too much free water due to other causes like severe infection, or someone who is being neglected and they're just not getting enough fluid? It happens more often than you realize, and it's sad. So you estimate the free water deficit. There are calculators in your iPhone. Again, MedCalc is what I use. I don't know if it's QXCalc, but then I don't know. It doesn't work on my iPhone anymore, so I use MedCalc. And basically, what you need is patient's weight in kilograms. I think patient's gender. What your goal serum sodium is. You usually start out 145. And I think how quick you want to get there. I'd have to look at it again. But there is a general formula, and I don't think I'll make you memorize it. I didn't make you memorize it last year. I think I'll be nice. But the point is, it depends on whether it's chronic or acute. Again, here, you don't want to replace it too quickly. So, in chronic hypernatremia, D5W, 1.35 ml per hour times the weight in kilograms. And again, you don't want to lower it too quickly. In acute hypernatremia, you're basically giving a bolus. It's really not really so much of a bolus, because remember, when I told you before about boluses, it's more like 20 ml per kilogram as a bolus. Over here, it's an infusion 3 to 6 ml per hour times the patient's weight in kilograms. So again, acute hypernatremia, relatively rapid replacement. Chronic hypernatremia is going to be slower. You do not want to do it that quickly. It's not a race. You're okay with it taking 3 or 4 days, and when we do get these patients, it does take sometimes several days. If you had to err on the side of caution, generally speaking, we do it slowly. Unless for some reason we know that this is acute. How would you know that, Dr. Newsom? Well, what if you have a patient that you discharged yesterday? You have labs, and serum sodium was 144, and they went to the nursing home. And today they come because they have an altered mental status, they're lethargic, and you do the serum sodium, and it's been 24 hours. I mean, this is kind of stuck if it happens quickly, and let's say you do that, and they come back, and their serum sodium is now 165. That is acute. That's less than 48 hours. That's where you go with that higher rate, 3 to 6 ml per kilogram per hour. So if they weigh 50 kilograms, they're in a nursing home patient in many cases. So 50, you're going to go with 150 to 300 ml per hour and 5W. If it was chronic, you'd go with whatever 50 times 1.35 is. So 50 times 1.35, I don't know, somebody can do that. 65-ish. So, and your target sodium, where you don't have to necessarily continue with that D5W anymore, is 145. You don't want to drive them down to 135, 132. You want to go to the upper limit of normal. Address the underlying cause. That's why you're not, hopefully you don't have to give them IV fluid forever. What's the underlying cause? The patient had a stroke, they got discharged with a stroke, they get to the nursing home, they realize the patient doesn't want to eat, he's refusing to eat, he's refusing to drink, and that's why it happens. So addressing the underlying cause, if you can't convince the patient to eat and drink, well, we end up forcing them to by inserting a tube or peg tube. There's a G-tube, there's a tube that will go directly into the stomach. And that's how you'd address it. Alright? You want to drink? We're going to do it for you. That's what we do. So, address the underlying cause. You want to treat them, you want to get them to 145, but the continuing treatment is to address why it happened. Now, what's important? Causing for effect. If you have a patient with hyperinate treatment, they come in, their serum sodium is 167. They're like, ha, a lot. I remember Dr. Newsom said above 160 is critical. Critical. I've got to give them D5W. But I tell you that their blood pressure is 78 over 50. You're going to treat them with normal saline. You've got to expand their blood volume. And hypotonic fluid will not do that. So that's where that's my trickery. Trickery on a test. I'll give you hyponatremia. It'll be, I could even say it happened 24 hours ago, but their blood pressure is crappy. You treat the blood pressure, give them saline. Without using it, or hyponatremia, 168, don't we have to give them hypotonic fluid? Is saline hypotonic with respect to a serum sodium of 168? Yes, that's correct. Yes, it is, because the sodium content of normal saline is about 154 mg per liter. The total osmolality is about 308 mg per liter, or milliosmoles per liter rather, compared with the serum. Their serum, and you can calculate it. And I forget where I teach you to calculate serum osmolality. Dr. Taylor, I haven't already, but the serum osmolality of somebody with a sodium of 168 is going to be higher than the osmolality of normal saline. So you can rest assured that the treatment that you're giving them is hypotonic with respect to their serum, but you're addressing the fluid volume deficit. If their blood pressure is low, it's because they need more volume. They need more blood volume. You give them isotonic fluid. You give them normal saline. Yes. So will Clin also give laxative ringers? Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Might even be a better choice because the sodium content of laxative ringers is lower. It's 130. So it would be acceptable to give a bolus of laxative ringers. And actually, might be a better idea. Actually, I'll probably go so far to say it is a better idea. We don't use laxative ringers. We should use it more. The studies suggesting that we should use it more than also. So, does everybody understand that? That is really important. Your priority then is to treat the blood pressure through the sodium. But you're also treating the sodium because the fluid you're giving has less sodium than the serum. That makes sense? Good.
Don't you want the volume that's going into the veins to be slightly higher so it can draw water out of it?
No, that's a good thought.
That's why is that normal savings instead of flexible?
No, I mean, the laxative ringers are still, because of the other electrolytes in there, will still be isotonic with relation to the serum. It'll be a little lower. The tonicity of laxative ringers is about 275, 270-ish. But the flaw in the argument And this is something that, it reminds me to go over. When you are low on blood volume, what your body is going to do in order to try to sustain it, this happens in hemorrhage or it happens in other dehydration, is the concept of autotransfusion. And I might have mentioned it before. So autotransfusion, you're going to shift fluid from your interstitium, from the third space, into the bloodstream. So somebody who comes in hypernatremic and dehydrated has low water volume, if you will, outside of the bloodstream as well. So you want to give them either lactated ringers or saline, and ultimately a hypotonic fluid. These are fluids, hypotonic fluids, are going to encourage that movement of water back into the interstitium because they need it. They do need it there. And you're going to give this patient large volumes of fluid, and it'll all go back to where it's supposed to be. Remember, total body water is lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of liters. Blood volume is 5 to 7 liters. So you have like 20 to 30 liters of fluid total body water. That makes sense to everybody. They're very clear on that. And that's a good question. It brings up a good point. So, but ultimately, the IV fluid you're giving are going to make it back into the interstitium. So you can end up having to continue to give more and more to keep a blood pressure up until you get somebody closer to where they should be homeostatically. Okay. We talked about from hyponatremia treatment, central pontine demyelinosis or myelinosis, and so what ends up happening, just reminds me, the thing I had on for that. So, and this is horrifically scary. So, if you scroll up and you don't recognize that serum sodium grows too quickly, you don't do something about it, it could happen a couple of weeks later that the patient can develop locked-in system. So imagine that your existence with you sitting there, unable to move or interact with the world except for an eye blink, eye movement. That's it. So, you're uncomfortable, you have an itch, or whatever, can't do anything about it, can't complain, can't say anything, but you hear and understand everything that's going on. Be a prisoner in your own body. That would be pretty bad. So therefore, so therefore, don't let your sodium go up too quickly. You don't want to be responsible for that. Hypernatremia, brain edema, seizures, if you correct it too quickly the other way. That is sodium. See how much of the rest of it we can get to. I don't think we'll get to the whole thing. Chloride, don't worry too much about. I can't figure out how to ask questions chloride, except to recognize that you look at chloride when you're looking at anion gap. We'll talk about that at the end of this presentation, whether it's now or whether I record the end of the presentation. You look at it when you're looking at an anion gap acidosis, you end up having hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis. But do I ever look at chloride by itself and think, oh my goodness, there's hyperchloremic? No, usually it's happening with something else. So I'm really not going to mess with chloride by itself because usually it's accompanied by a derangement of sodium. Chloride by itself being deranged, I can't think of anything, except I can tell you that hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis, the mechanism there is loss of bicarbonate usually. A lot of times renal tubular acidosis. Sometimes you can get hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis just from too much saline administration. But again, we'll talk about this close to the end of the presentation when we talk briefly about acid base with respect to serum PAC, which correlates with bicarbonate level. Potassium. Very, very, very common. So this morning, 3 of my pages between 4:30 and 6 a.m. were potassium levels. Normal range 3.5 to 5 milliequivalents per liter. Most labs will be somewhere around that. It might differ by a little bit, 3.5 to 5.1, but generally speaking, 3.5 to 5 is what you should memorize. Critical values. And these I interpret a bit more loosely. So, yes, still for the purposes of the exam, I still do want to know critical values. However, a critical value, how do I put this? A value that's not above 6.5, let's say, because I told you that high is more dangerous than low, it becomes critical if their EKG changes. So if you have somebody with a potassium level of 5.9 and their EKG is completely normal, not an immediate life or death emergency. You have potassium of 5.9 or somebody with peak T wave or widened QRS or other EKG changes. You're going to leave that vague if you haven't had EKG yet, right? You haven't had it yet. Next semester, I think. So, if you have EKG changes with hyperkalemia, that is something that you need to stop what you're doing. And at very least, order some treatments which will help stabilize the heart. We will talk about that. And I will hold you responsible for those if that is categorized under the things that Dr. Newman says will kill my patient's outfit. So you will be tested on the treatment of hyperkalemia, and I'm proud to say that the class before you and the class before that was one of the things that all of them did. I drilled into the scare the crap out of them, and I did a medi where that was really common. Everybody knew it. Nobody was going to mistreat hyperkalemia. So normal range, but critical is going to depend on either the level by itself or if there's an EKG change associated with it. Now, how are things actually done in the hospital? Anybody with potassium really above 5.3, 5.5-ish, there's generally some level, some degree of panic, and it ends up being treated. Because you don't want to be the person caught with their pants down where your patient dies because you do not treat the hyperkalemia. It happens. It happens. That's cardiac arrest due to hyperkalemia. It happens. So, causes of hyperkalemia, these are some. The most common by far, the two most common by far, I correct myself, renal failure and metabolic acidosis. Those by far are the most common that I've seen where the potassium goes up. Yes, dehydration, but I would classify that under acute kidney injury, kind of one of the things. Infection, well, yeah, I would also take that and say, well, they're dehydrated and a lot of times they have an acidosis due to lactic acid levels being increased. So those two I would reclassify and say, no, that's still acidosis or renal failure. Can it be due to excessive intake? Well, maybe. In the person with normal kidneys, very rare. So you'll pee it out. You'll just pee out the potassium. Now, excessive intake in the face of, you guessed it, renal failure or dehydration, absolutely. Hypoaldosteronism, Addison's disease, those are two more rare causes. But things you should think about if you have somebody with a low, or a high range of normal, we have a K of 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, and maybe low sodium. Then you start thinking about stuff like hypoaldosteronism, Addison's disease as being a possible cause. But the vast majority of cases are going to be acidosis or renal failure. Renal failure, and we'll cover these superficially so that it makes sense. But again, that starts to encroach on really PMS topic. Again, you don't need to, this is something I have to take, I have to memorize it. Now, don't get me wrong, it is a good idea to really learn these and to memorize some of these causes, and as you move on and learn more, they'll make more sense. But I'm not going to dive into minutiae too badly, but loose diuretics, that's a side effect of loose diuretics. Beta agonists, it actually ends up as one of the things you do to treat temporarily hyperkalemia. For a gold star. I haven't bought the gold star, so hopefully nobody gets it. I'm about to buy a gold star. What is the mechanism behind hyperkalemia with beta agonist administration? It's physiology. Sir. That's half a gold star. That's half a gold star. I wanted a specific, so specifically, what specific, how do I do this? I'm getting the answer. What specific cellular mechanism ends up being activated by beta agonists? Be more specific. So it's something that happens. Yeah. So, and that's what did it say? The sodium potassium pump. So that's what happens. If you give somebody albuterol, it ends up activating and speeding up the sodium potassium pumps because of the catecholamine. So you were correct on that initial, so the catecholamine, which ends up increasing the sodium potassium pump speed, if you will, and remember sexpins is how I remember it. Sodium in paramedical. Sodium extracellular, potassium intracellular. Sexpins. So, do you remember sexpins? So it ends up pushing the potassium into the cell, and that's how it lowers the serum potassium, but it's temporary. So that's why you got to give the albuterol again, give it again, and we'll talk about the treatment for hyperkalemia. So again, other causes of hypokalemia. Another important cause we'll run into, GI secretion. Just think of GI secretion being rich in electrolytes. One of them is going to be potassium, and then when you lose it down on the south end, that's magnesium. You end up losing a lot of magnesium. You're going to lose bicarbonate there. If you lose Mg, if you lose stomach contents, you're going to lose a lot of hydrogen ions, so acid. So that will clue you into what else happens, or what other abnormalities you might see when you lose in GI secretion. So in acute care, and by acute care is focusing on the end, like hospital care and whatnot, sick people. GI secretions and being able to anticipate what happens is important because it happens when you think of things that put people in the hospital. One of them is GI secretion. So loop diuretics, a side effect of loop diuretics is potassium loss. Insulin administration, which we alluded to before, that that's another way that potassium gets pushed into the cell, the mechanism of which that I'm not certain exactly why that occurs. Alkalosis. So alkalosis. So we'll talk about it later in this presentation, the concept of buffering, the exchange of potassium for hydrogen ions. I don't remember if I alluded to this before, if I'm just confusing you with 1 year ago. So if somebody becomes acidemic, the body wants to get rid of those hydrogen ions. So one of the ways you buffer it is by taking hydrogen ions into the cell. And remember, in electron neutrality, you have to give something up. So you give up potassium because your cells are full of potassium. So you take in the H, you lose the K. So in remember, one of the causes of hyperkalemia is renal failure. So renal failure or acidosis. Renal failure, you have acidosis is one of the things that happens. The kidneys are in charge of reclaiming and regenerating bicarb. So anyway, so you have somebody who's acidemic, hydrogen ion concentration goes up, hydrogen ion enters the cell, potassium leaves. If they're alkalemic, the opposite happens. And you end up taking the potassium into the cell. So remember that pH, the variations in pH can cause variations in the serum potassium. You just remember that it's on a continuum. You'll remember the relationship of potassium to acidosis and alkalosis. Deficient intake, that's rare. I mean, most people will take in enough potassium, and it's really goes again, person who drinks a case of beer a day. I don't think you have time to eat, you're getting cramming all that alcohol. I don't know, that's, people do that, so that's crazy. Hypokalemia, I've never seen serious hypokalemia. Redistribution. Talked about potassium depletion, we alluded to. So all these things are kind of restating to some extent we've already talked about. Magnesium depletion, that's important. So if someone's potassium is low, again, these are some of the things you can think about. But magnesium depletion, if your magnesium is low, you'll never be able to get the potassium up. So if you have hypomagnesemia and hypokalemia, you have to replace the magnesium and then replace the potassium or do it at the same time. So if you have somebody hypokalemic, your first and easiest investigation might be to be question and order what's the magnesium level? What is serum magnesium? If it's low, you have your answer. And there you go. So this is something common. I mean, every day or every other day, all the time, we'll see patients who have a low magnesium, which will contribute to why the potassium is low. You got to replace it low. Yes. True. So what would I mean, in the acute care setting, serum levels under about 1.8 are considered to be low. So anything below that, I would want to get them about 2.0. So yeah, magnesium, especially folks malnourished, especially alcoholics are notorious for having low magnesium. And serum magnesium levels correlate very poorly to total body magnesium because you store most of it in the bone. And it's intracellular basically. So hospitalized patients, we'll see in hypomagnesemia every day. Every day people replacing more, it just evaporates. And maybe like trick magnesium is actually staying to really not magnesium. So hypokalemia, I mean, these are vague. Have I seen prominent G waves, acute chances for broadening of T waves? No, maybe I just haven't looked for them. I guess it's good to know. I'm not going to beat you up on it, but you can have, if it's low enough, you can have cardiac arrest. You can have EKG changes. We looked at PVCs and PACs. It may mean some things to some of you, and if it doesn't, that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to test it. So you might get EKG changes. You might get cramping. You might get skeletal muscle weakness. Have I seen decreased respiratory muscle function? No. I've seen that more from severe hypophosphatemia, which is next semester. So I mean, signs and symptoms I really wouldn't worry about too much. But generally speaking, if you get a patient who has vague symptoms, a BMP, basic metabolic panel, is one that you want to pick up. Maybe it's electrolyte abnormality. These symptoms to me are relatively vague. But yeah, we have seen folks who get ileus. And all ileus means is the bowel stops functioning for some reason. It's not obstructed, it's just the peristalsis kind of slows down and stops. And one of the things that we want to attack in the acute care patient with ileus is make sure their electrolytes are normal. But I'm not going to test down which of all is not a symptom of hypotension. It's still nice. So now what am I really concerned with is, all right, you have a low serum potassium, and you've thought about their acid-base status, their renal status. Are they losing the potassium somewhere, obviously? Is it going up or down, or the kidney is not working, or are you giving them medication that's causing it? And then what do? So the goal is to get them to at least normal 3.5. If they're having arrhythmias, if they're having abnormal EKG, you want to get them up to 4.0. I'm going to leave it as vague as that because explaining it would require a lot and not mean too much to you. So now, if the patient's having cardiac arrhythmias, you want to get them up to 4.0. 9 out of 10 cardiologists would agree that that's where you want to get them. Now, I haven't been able to find literature that says why we want to get them to magnesium is 2.0 and potassium is 4.0, but some reason that the person, the cardiologist, will say. So how do you do that? Preferentially orally. If not, you can give it IV. You can give it as a little bag where you kind of bolus them. You give them 10 MEQ per hour as a floor patient, 20 MEQ an hour as an ICU patient. You can add it to IV fluids. You can add anywhere from 10 to 40 MEQ per liter of IV fluid. These are things I alluded to when we talked about IV fluids in that previous lecture. But the pearl of wisdom, the little tidbit of knowledge that you should hold on to, if there are no confounding factors, you should expect for every 10 MEQ of replacement potassium in the normal person, no confounding factor, their serum K will increase by 0.1 MEQ per liter. What does that mean? If I gave you a patient who has a potassium of 2.5, how many MEQ of potassium with no other confounding factors would it take to get the potassium up to a level of 3.5? Someone's answer that. Pretty easy. 100. You're going to give 100 MEQ. You don't give it at once. So if you're giving a TO, I would give 20 to 40 no sooner than every 2 hours. You can give every 4 hours. You can give 20 every 4 hours and give several doses. The point is, if you give too much at once, you'll pee it out. You're not going to absorb it. Also, it has a propensity to cause nausea and vomiting. Vomiting is going to lower your potassium even more. When you give it orally, it's kind of hard on the stomach. It's a horse pill, probably about this big. Maybe a little smaller. But it is a very large tablet. One of the largest tablets I've ever seen. It's literally just a full meal. So you give it a TO. This caveat with potassium replacement. If the renal function is abnormal, especially if their creatinine is more than 2, you want to be very careful. You want to get much less. You want to scrutinize how much potassium you get because you excrete it renally. So if your potassium, somebody's and urine, you're not making any urine, then I wouldn't give more than like 10 MEQ at a time. The last thing you want to do is get somebody potassium and go from hypokalemia to hyperkalemia. I'd rather see the patient hypokalemic than hyperkalemic. Hyperkalemic is a bigger threat to life than hypokalemic. So, the take-home message, if abnormal renal function, scrutinize how much you're getting. It's hard for me to give you a rule. I can give you a personal rule, but at the same time, again, it's just unfair because I work in ICU. So if I have somebody with a high creatinine, I do give potassium. I just give much less. And how much do I give? Depends on how I feel, depends on where it is, depends on how much urine I'm making, depends on the patient's symptoms. So it's hard to tell you how much. So try to give you some guidelines. But again, just general caution with renal insufficiency. If you're not experienced with giving potassium back, you probably shouldn't, and you should probably ask somebody. But if somebody has normal kidneys, you really can't overdose, especially not orally. The other thing is IV potassium hurts a lot. It can blow the vein. And again, 10 MEQ replacement should increase the serum concentration by 0.1 MEQ per liter with no other confounding factors. Confounding factors: diarrhea, vomiting, low magnesium. You have to be also giving potassium in the IV fluid, or your patient has mild renal insufficiency, moderate renal insufficiency. But if I'm giving it to somebody in this room, I would expect it to go up definitely by 10 MEQ. 10 MEQ should go up, should raise it by 0.1. So that's an initial kind of guideline to tell you approximately how much you want to give. And then you recheck the potassium. You check it several hours later, you check it the next morning to see where it is. And your level of urgency depends on symptoms and how you range it. You should be very concerned if it's 1.9. That's critical. That patient should be in the ICU for that. And it's 3.1, 3.2 is not bad. Once you get into the 2s, the nurses start to worry. But again, you generally tolerate hypokalemia better than hyperkalemia. Hyperkalemia, that's bad. This is a potential threat to life. You do have to scrutinize the cause. You want to address the underlying cause so it doesn't keep happening. What can cause it? Acidosis. The treatment and addressing the acidosis will correct, or in part, correct your hyperkalemia. Kidney disease, if it's chronic, if they have really bad hyperkalemia, that's an indication for dialysis. Patient with a K of 9. I'm on the phone with a nephrologist saying that patient with 9. They might need dialysis. And sometimes they will dialyze somebody just because of that. So tissue trauma, why? When you crush tissue, remember, sex kin. You have sex kin, you crush tissue, and it's going to become sex X, I guess. It happens in the extracells as well. So you're released from the cell membrane because they get destroyed by the crushing. Medications, ACE inhibitors should be held in any patient with high potassium levels. ACE inhibitors will cause high potassium levels. Potassium-sparing diuretics such as spironolactone can cause hyperkalemia. And never thought of beta blockers causing hyperkalemia, but I guess for the same reason that a beta agonist would drive down the potassium, the beta blocker can actually bring it up by slowing down the sodium potassium. That's how I reason through that. This is important because this happens relatively frequently also. Usually the laboratory will flag it and it will tell you specimen hemolysis. So vigorous phlebotomy, small bore needles, multiple attempts, using vigorous suction. What does that mean? Well, let's say nurse can't get blood. Nurse says, you know what, screw this. I'm not going to use a vacuum cleaner. I'm going to use a syringe. We're going to go and I'm going to start the IV. I'm going to put the syringe and I'm going to get that blood and keep going back and it doesn't come out good. It comes out with a bunch of bubbles and anybody who's done phlebotomy will know what I'm talking about. As paramedics out there, people have observed it. But generally speaking, vigorous phlebotomy. You're having a tough time getting the blood for whatever reason. For some reason, those cells lyse. Remember, sex pins. The pins become EX. EX. They become extracellular. Then the lab processes it, and you have a high potassium level only because those cells broke and the potassium collapsed. So that's a source of lab error. So if you have somebody with hyperkalemic and you know that the phlebotomy is difficult, redraw it. The lab may not tell you it's hemolyzed. But if it's vigorous, if it's difficult, really scrutinize the potassium level. This is important. Hyperkalemia, you will get EKG changes. You're going to first start with peak, narrow T waves. You can get tachycardia, you can get bradycardia. What's really ominous is a sine wave looking rhythm. And yes, it resembles a sine wave. It might not be that perfect sine wave. I mean, I think most of you or all of you should take in trigonometry. Yes, you should learn about the sine wave. So you will get something that just looks like hills back and up and down and up and down. If you see that and you know the patient's hyperkalemic, you should immediately stop. You have a small MI, and once you're done with that, hopefully very quickly, you address it. Because that's very scary because you're watching a patient who's about to die right in front of you. Not hyperbole, not exaggeration, they will. What else can they get? Muscle weakness, muscle paralysis, cramping, paresthesias, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, but most importantly are EKG changes. So it's mild. And by mild, certainly less than 6.5, so it's in the 5s or something. So you want to get the potassium out. And if you can't suddenly wake up the kidneys and get them to pee it out, a cation exchange resin we call KX, technically sodium polythyrene sulfonate. So you give it orally. It's very delicious. No, I don't think it is. But you can also give it as rectal enema if you, I was going to say if you don't like the nurse. You should like all nurses. They're nice. They're nice people. They're there to help people. But if they can't take orally, you can give it as an enema. But, unintended. Very important. KX-late you do not give if for some reason you're afraid of the bowel function, recent bowel surgery. If you think for some reason you're scared of the side effect of bowel necrosis, black box warning for KX-late, bowel necrosis. If that's a possibility, KX-late is contraindicated. At least for a while when we were ordering it in the computer at Leeds, you order it and immediately a big screen comes up and says, caution, bowel necrosis may ensue. Are you sure you want to do this? So you got to be careful. This is not a benign medication. So if someone's asymptomatic and their potassium is 5.3 and they're just a little dry, give them some fluid, give them a fluid bolus and recheck it. They might get better with this staff. If they're not in acute kidney injury, you can try a loop diuretic to remove the potassium. And of course, avoid potassium-containing foods, avoid medications that can raise the serum potassium level, and follow it up. Now, if the patient has severe muscle weakness, if they have EKG changes, it's important to have EKG changes. Or if their K is equal to or greater than 6.5, which is critical, immediate treatment is indicated. Put down your coffee, put down your sandwich, put down your pizza, stop flirting with the boy or girl that you're flirting with. Treat the patient literally first, stabilize the cardiac cell membrane. Second, remove potassium from the serum using quick but temporary measures. Third, remove the potassium from the body. How do you do that? cool and fun can you do? Well, no. No. So this is important. And something I want you to remember for the rest of your life. Is you literally, if you do this, now with the protocol, it makes it really easy. Only a couple of clicks if you do this with the computer order set. Before you actually had to use your brain and memorize it and actually write the order in ink to sign it. First, stabilize the cardiac cell membranes with intravenous calcium. You give calcium gluconate, 1 gram IV. Then you're going to give 50% glucose, B50, dextrose 50% in water, 25 grams IV. Then you're going to give intravenous insulin. Why are you giving dextrose and insulin? Well, if you give insulin by itself, you're just going to make somebody hypoglycemic. Give them sugar, and give them insulin. The sugar is not going to push up potassium into the cells, but the insulin will. So 25 grams of 50% dextrose, 10 units of intravenous short-acting insulin. You're not done yet. Don't get your sandwich. Don't get a cold though if you got a hot one. So then you're going to go and you're going to order beta-2 adrenergic agonist, that's albuterol. You're going to order 10 milligrams of nebulized albuterol. And usually I'll tell the respiratory therapist, hey, listen, it's not for COPD or asthma. I know the patient's breathing fine. This is for potassium. And they should know. They should recognize this is one of the treatments for hyperkalemia. 10 milligrams of albuterol, which is 4 treatments. It's an hour-long treatment that's going to speed up the sodium potassium pump. And if the patient has significant metabolic acidosis, usually a low pH under 7, a low CO2, use your judgment. The thing is that if you correct acidosis, you correct it quickly, that can also cause a shift of potassium. This is temporary stabilization. This is what you do. You do this, and you can resume breathing, finish off the sandwich, and then think about whether you want to do encapsulate, if not at risk for intestinal necrosis. Consider a little diuretic. If the patient's potassium is very high, you don't expect to lower it soon. If it's like, again, there's no hard and steadfast level, but usually when we've done it, because patients have ridiculously high potassium of 9.5, or significant DKT changes, call your local neighborhood-friendly nephrologist. There's a couple that actually aren't friendly, but most of them are pretty cool. I won't give you names because I don't know if you guys know them, but they're mean. It's something they're mean to me. So hemodialysis, and of course address the underlying cause. This is a good natural stopping. Any questions? Anything completely lost that you feel it will be for the good of the class? I'm going to go over now. No, I'm afraid to raise my hand because people get mad at me at lunchtime. Well, then I will